Welcome back to Blacklight on Sports. My name is Charles Hallman,
I'm Dr. Mitchell Palmer McDonald.
and tonight we have in the middle a good friend, a longtime friend. In fact, our paths crossed so much that we've been talking about it. Lawrence Ellis. We went to high school together, we went to college together, and I don't know how we wound up in Minnesota together, but we've been here forever. And so, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity.
Now, Lawrence, you
So before we get started, can I say something?
yeah, please.
So X amount of years ago, might have been XX years ago, I'm listening to local sports talk. Can't remember who it was. I'll just say it was the Twin Cities Old Guard.
Okay.
And somebody on the program said, "You've been reading this stuff about this Hallman kid?" And so they started talking about it. And the guy was like, he's pretty good. I glean, but I can guarantee you, Doolin, Rachel, Bob Moran, all those people gleaned because to me it was one of those signs that said all that stuff that we went through as kids, that education and stuff, it was being appreciated, here in Minnesota. It was so apparently your peers appreciate you.
I guess they do. So, so now you got me all teary. Well, talk about your journey. Talk about the things that you've done leading up to coming to Minnesota.
Grew up in Detroit, and as we were talking about when the program started, went to a unique school, St. Martin de Porres. It was an experiment of consolidating a few schools in Detroit when Detroit was on the decline, so to speak. My freshman year was the same year that the Detroit riots were started, and that was about a mile from the school. But we were the first four-year class, and kind of as we were talking about earlier, we went to a school that was an experiment that had teachers and faculty that just cared about those black kids and made sure that we succeeded. And then succeeded means a lot of different things, but when we graduated, we were able to go forward. I wound up at Michigan State, and actually, here's what I remember. Freshman year, Ohio State's playing Michigan State in basketball. I'm sitting in the stands, and I said, "I played for Mr. Racial, right? I can do that." Because I didn't see anything out there spectacular. So the next year, I walked on and made the team for a couple of years, and Gus had me after I stopped playing, working with the JV team there and working with an alternative school in in Lansing. So Gus kind of helped me get started in coaching, but my degree brought me to Minnesota, Charles. Worked for Honeywell for a number of years, a long time. Eventually worked at Medtronic, but I had met Jim Dutcher, who was he was the assistant at Michigan. I had met him at basketball camp. And so I got a meeting with him and started talking to him about, hey, I'm looking to do some volunteer coaching. And that's when Minnesota still had their JV basketball team. And so, I'm working at Honeywell and darting over to the university and ran their JV program for a number of years. Really enjoyed that. I think in the years that I did that, only one kid actually made it from junior varsity to the varsity.
Okay.
But that was fun. That was fun. I mean, it was fun just because I enjoy the game, Williams Arena, the athletes, and that continued, quite frankly, with Clem. Didn't have a JV program, but I talked to Clem, and he allowed me access to the team and to the players. And I just loved being over at Williams Arena. And did the scorebook one year. That was really interesting. So I stayed close to University of Minnesota athletics for a number of years. I left Honeywell and went actually down to North Carolina. That's got me down there. That's we kind of severed that relationship, but
Mm-hmm.
came back but I was always doing basketball camps with Dutcher and Clem,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
and somewhere along the line had a kid who just happened to be a good athlete. He had 5 state championships
Yeah.
in track and field,
Yeah.
long jump, triple jump. So that's been kind of at least my athletic journey. But during that time, I'm working at Honeywell. I'm working with Medtronic.
Mm-hmm.
Had some great opportunities to do things. Gosh, I'm dating myself. But, the kids on the north side. I used to be on the board of directors at the North Community Y. Spent some time at Falwell.
Mm-hmm.
Over at, can't remember the name of the rec center there too. But, spent a lot of time because it was the right thing to do. You go to St. Martin de Porres, you understand how important it is to reach back and help people do those things.
I'd like you to share a little bit. We both have commonality and familiarity with Ed Rachel, who was our basketball coach in high school, and both got us thinking about coaching. You got into coaching, I got into coaching. But talk about him. Mr. Rachel's no longer with us, but talk about just the influence he had on you. 'Cause I know how much he had on me, but this is about you. So the influence he had on it that you took with you wherever you went
Yeah,
from there.
and that's a good way of putting it, wherever you went. So talk about names. I'm out in San Diego talking to Tony Fuller, right? And he's driving me around. I noticed that Tony Fuller has a little rag in the book.
Oh no!
And I said, how'd you start doing that? Yeah, Ed Rachel. I said, I got the same thing in my car. Ed Rachel was his first year as head basketball coach at DePorres was my senior year.
Mhm.
I proudly wear the badge of honor that team was the worst team in the history of the school. Literally. I think I was the only senior starter. But who was starting the other guard? David Rowland. And, there was Pete Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
And they had all these young kids. And we didn't have the athletes. But if you looked at how Mr. Rachel put that team together, your senior year, kids were dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just the dynamics of on the court. Mr. Rachel was really somebody who cared about the kids. We talked about Dana Coggins as an example of somebody who he went the extra mile on. But there were a lot of kids that Mr. Rachel cared for, and that carried, put it like this, there were 3 people that I used to go home outside of family.
Mm-hmm.
There were 3 people that I would always go see. My great aunt, she was like 100 years old when she died.
Mm-hmm.
Father Moran,
Mm-hmm.
who was the pastor of our school and church, and Mr. Rachel. And it wasn't just about basketball, but you get him talking about basketball, you couldn't get him to shut up. Because he had that personality. He talked about his book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know who's got the book now. I had it for a while. I think I gave it to Daryl. But somebody's got the book.
Somebody got that book.
But it was fascinating looking at his notes and how to coach. And I remember he told me a story where he bumped into Bobby Knight. And they sat down and talked. And, Bobby Knight, legendary coach.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And apparently Bobby took some of the notes from Mr. Rachel, to improve Indiana when Indiana was at its peak. So, he was just a great person in so many different ways, including his fashion attire that he showed off at every game.
His joke was that he said he would never go to the moon unless he could take his Cadillac.
Oh,
He
yes.
wasn't gonna go
Yeah.
up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had the towel too.
Yeah, you had
I had the towel too.
Yeah.
So that was an influence. And we could talk about him for hours. But just in terms of just the thing he said to me, I remember he came here for the Final Four. First time I had the Final Four here in
Mhm.
Minnesota, and we had dinner with him. It was Jeff Webb, Tony Fuller, me and you, I believe, was there. And he kept bragging about all the, everybody around the table. And all y'all played for him, all y'all played and starred for him. I'm just this bench warmer that never, got off the bench. But he talked about me like I was a star.
Right. Yeah.
And he's talking about he's coaching high school basketball. I mean, he just bragged about me.
Yeah.
Like I was just, Tony Fuller got him his first championship. All these great players, and then he talked about me like I was, I was just as good, and I felt honored that night that he saw that. And
He had never seen Willie Burton play here in Minnesota, and I think it might have been Willie's last game of that season.
Mm-hmm.
I flew him up for that game, and then I took him to a event afterwards, and first, it was just amazing just how people gravitated towards him. It wasn't necessarily him talking about himself.
Mm-hmm.
It was trying to understand who he was, and he wanted to meet people and stuff like that. And of course, he loved Willie.
And Woody got a lot of story about him, but Clem loved him too. Clem brought him up here for a clinic one time to teach defense.
Oh, yes, right. I remember
brought
that.
him up
Yes.
here. Yeah,
Yes.
so he was a mastermind in terms of
Techniques and stuff.
techniques and fundamentals and stuff. A legend, definitely. There's not somebody who grew up in our generation that would not know who Ed Rachel was.
Always made sure we had good uniforms.
Oh yeah,
Always had
first
good
year of uniforms was designed after the Cincinnati Royals.
Yep.
They had the lettering down there.
Yep.
No, he made sure we looked sharp.
He
Now,
made
He
sure
didn't
we
have
looked
anything
sharp.
else, but he
Yep.
made sure we looked sharp.
Now, what were some of, when you got into coaching, what were some of the qualities that you took from Coach Rachel that you used or expanded on?
Yeah, fundamentals.
Okay.
And it's the small, repetitive things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you two good examples. One, I had this drill. It's not a 3-man weave; it's a 5-man weave.
Okay.
But part of the rules were you had to touch the sidelines when you weaved in and out. So we'd have coaches on the sideline.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to do the pyramid. You had to go once, twice, whatever it was. But if you didn't touch the sideline, you'd have to start over again. If you didn't make the layup, you had to start over again. So it was a mental thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I most remember carrying over from Mr. Rachel.
Okay.
It was the small things. And there was one kid that I coached at the U. He was from New York. And it may still be in place today, but at the time, there was only one place that people really knew how to play basketball, or so they thought.
Mm-hmm.
And that was New York, right? Okay. And I'm also, this is Magic and all this. I'm like, wait a minute, there are some other places to play. And I used to fight with this kid all the time about the fundamental basics. By the end of the season, he got it.
Mm-hmm.
He goes back home to New York, and he came back that next year, and he says he was killing people. He said, all these little things, these guys had no idea what I was doing. Now he was just doing the basics. And there was another kid, I can't think of his last name, but Rod. The kid could just jump. And he just liked to dunk all the time. And he was a point guard. And I'm like, so what? You can dunk. Why don't you learn how to shoot? And we argued about that. But he something must have registered with him. So he finally understood that, if he takes the 10, 15-foot jump shot, he doesn't have to always challenge the bigs. And it expanded his game. So it was always the basics.
Always the basics and the little things.
It's the little things.
Okay.
It's the little things.
Now you also stayed involved in sports, even after your son had graduated and went on to college. You got involved in the state high school league. Talk about that experience.
I had, boy, that's a great conversation. So somebody nominated me because it was a secret nomination. to be on the Minnesota State High School League Board of Directors.
Mm-hmm.
I was appointed by the governor, and the high school league had about 20 people. 4 were appointed by the governor. They had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I will say this, take my son aside, take family aside. In terms of an experience, that was the greatest experience I think I've ever had. Why is that? No matter what the issues were, under Dave Stead at the time, and I think the same leadership today is there, it all came down to what's in the best interest of the kids.
Mm.
And so, did we have tough issues to deal with? Yes. But it always came down to what's in the best interest of the kids. The other thing that I took away from that was people have a misunderstanding of how the high school league works. So you got the board of directors, it's more governance. You got the staff that makes things happen. Then you have the member schools. There's about 450 when I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And things don't come from the top down. It's very participatory up and down, because you might have a region of the state that wants to do, what was one of the recent ones, robotics or shooting. And they have to build the constituency to say, we're going to make this part of the high school league. Boys volleyball was one of the recent ones. Mm-hmm. So somebody on the board might not come up with the idea. One of the schools might come up with that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Every school gets a vote. And one of the issues that I had when I went on the board was I was very concerned about the lack of participation by, I'll just say, inner city schools. North High School being a good example, Johnson being another good example, because there are things that you have to do to cost money.
Yep.
And there were kids that just don't have the funds. So one of the things that happened during my tenure was the high school. So the high school league is a quasi-state agency, which means it's not part of the state of Minnesota, but because it's education, there's a strong link there.
Mm-hmm.
Open enrollment, people talk about transfer rules, right? Open enrollment takes a lot of that out of the hands of the high school league, because we were told state legislatures will not allow the high school league to touch anything to do with open enrollment. It's going to be that way. So you do things that are per what the state legislators want, but you also do things what schools want. And it was just that dynamic that I enjoyed. Mm-hmm. If I didn't enjoy any one thing, and you might laugh at this, so because I was a governor appointee, or maybe it was because I'm on the board, I had to have my address public. Mm. And I said, oh, hell no. And so I went out and got a UPS box. and that's what I used. And, you hear stories about how parents, every kid is going to make the Olympics. My kid's going to make the Olympics. Mm-hmm. No, your kid's not going to make the Olympics. But some of the things that parents do for their own egos is just, you could write a book about things, sad things. Mm-hmm. My kid wants to transfer. Well, if they transfer, they got to sit out the next year. Took the high school league to court, even though they had sat down with the high school league and they explained it to them. If you transfer, these are the rules. I won't name the school, but the kid, sectional soccer tournament. Kid's headed for one of the Ivy League schools. Puts his hands on the referee for a bad call, or so he thought. He gets kicked out of the game, which he should have been. Parents sued the high school league and the school district. What are you teaching your kid? He put his hands on a referee. You should have walked on the field, grabbed him, and put him in the stands. But the high school league, I think, sometimes gets a bad rap. When you go to the National High School League symposium on an annual basis, you kind of learn, surprisingly, how far advanced Minnesota was in a number of areas in terms of taking care of its kids. Mm-hmm. And that's what made it enjoyable.
Now, you said you came here to work in the business world. Was there any regrets of moving here to to work in the business world where you could have maybe just went back to Detroit or could have?
So every November when the temperatures start to go down, I keep asking myself, why? That's a great question. My brother graduated from Morehead State a couple of years before.
Oh, okay.
Right? And he'd call home complaining about how cold it was. And I said, well, I'll never move up there. But, here I am. So, that's a fair question. Somebody hasn't asked me that in a long time because people literally, when I came out of Michigan State, had me positioned to become a teacher.
Okay.
And when I got to Michigan State, I have a unique degree. It's from the School of Packaging. And Michigan State has the premier packaging school in the country. What got me involved in that is that the year before I enrolled, there were 150 graduates in the country. There were 300 jobs for those 150 graduates. I said, that's the program I want to enroll in. Everybody, there were 9 of us that graduated when I did. Everybody got at least 2 job offers. I actually got 3. Kodak, Honeywell, and somebody else. And I'm going to jump ahead, but I'll come back to your question. Years later, when I moved back from North Carolina, which would have been the early 90s, I bumped into Arnie Carlson. Carlson was good friends with Clem. And I introduced myself. It was in the summer months. As a matter of fact, it was a basketball camp. I hadn't started, but that's why I was talking to Clem. Arnie didn't have a lot on his agenda that day. And he said, you want to go to lunch? Governor's asking me to lunch. I'm more than happy to. So he was asking me, why did I come back to Minnesota? And it's kind of the reasons I came here in the first place. Grew up in Detroit. Low crime rate was important to me. I didn't want to go through that again. So Minnesota at the time, relatively safe place. Good education. And I'm gonna come back to that because that ties into Willie Burton, and as well as if you look at industry in this state, medical, sciences, agribusiness, when the rest of the country goes like this, Minnesota just kind of floats around. So that was kind of what drew me here. And that's kind of why I've stayed here, even though I'm not sure why I'm staying here now. But, when Dutcher told me about Willie Burton and said, we're going after him, Willie was a hot commodity at the time. And so I go home to Detroit, and I get a chance to meet with Willie and his parents, and I gave a pitch, and I focused on 3 things. I said it'll be a good environment for Willie to grow up. I said he'll get a good education, and I kind of said basketball will take care of itself. Willie would have been successful no matter where he went. But I didn't talk about how great he was and all the other stuff. And I talked to his mom afterwards. She said they were stunned. You didn't tell him what position he was going to play. And I said, Dutcher's going to take care of all that. And, I thought, I think, was it Michigan State and Minnesota were kind of fighting on that. And, I respect Judd a lot. But I kind of felt that Willie's personality at the time would have gone really well with Dutcher, because I can't remember in that mess when it flipped.
It was a senior year in high school when
right. And so he wound up with Clem, and I'm like, gee, that it kind of works out even better. So and Willie went on and had a really successful career here. So I've enjoyed my time here in Minnesota, and
How much has you seen things change from the time you moved here to? We'll take the pandemic out of that equation because that everybody got affected by it. But in terms of over the years, how much have you seen this this state and this area has changed for the good and for the bad.
Well, the Twin City or Minneapolis, St. Paul, the inner ring suburbs, and now, we're at least the Twin Cities is huge. Going all the way down to Rosemont, going all the way up up to Albertville, and out to Stillwater now. So, just the territory of what the Twin Cities is just really changed a lot. And it's changed a lot of the dynamics of the political power, because it used to be solely the Twin Cities, but now it's, now you got to take into effect that you do have people in Rosemont and up in Maple Grove who have influence. The bad, boy, the crime, really bad. People here talk about how horrible it is, and sometimes I grew up in Detroit. I get it. It's still not that bad. I've seen, we talking about Dana Goggins, right? Let me tell you, I've seen worse. So I think that's the one thing that's changed that concerns me is the security. Education. You're a teacher, and the I'm not going to use that word, but the importance of education, I think, has drifted, and I think that has not served our kids well. And I wish we had more parents. I'm going to start with the parents engaged in making sure their kids get a good education, because if you get a good education in Minnesota, there's a lot of opportunity that you don't get in other places across the country.
Very true.
So those are the two biggest changes that I've seen, is the crime and the education. I'm amazed at how many, take the University of Minnesota out of the equation, but how many schools that kids, colleges, and stick the Dunwoody's and the other technical schools in there. I mean, gosh, for such a small state, a lot of educational opportunities past secondary that we should be taking care of.
We was at St. Thomas this past weekend. They're now a Division I school,
right?
And then it got the new arena, but it still has that small field, IAC type of feel to it. But if they really do what they're supposed to do, which they keep saying they will, in terms of reaching out more, that can be a place where kids, especially kids of color, could go to.
I agree with you.
And won't get swallowed up.
I agree.
If they went, as they would if they went to the U.
I agree. Dick Schultz, the founder of Best Buy, he's put some money in there, as have the Andersons, and I would like to see St. Thomas really reach out and bring in some kids, because it's a good school.
Yeah.
It's a good school. As is Metro State. The more I look at education in this state, I'm really impressed with some of the things that are going on there, and that's an easy access for kids, regardless of where you live in the metro area. I ran into a kid at one of my favorite stores, an ice cream store, and he's from Egypt, I think. And he was talking about how excited he is, and he's enrolled in Metro State, and just looking forward to getting that education. So it's there.
Your son is a lawyer.
My
correct?
son is an attorney. Yes, he is.
It's got to be exciting.
It's interesting. It's interesting, and part of the reason that he got in that, his mom's an attorney. His stepdad, by the way, Jerry Blackwell, who I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
His stepdad is Jerry Blackwell, so that had a lot of influence on him going to law school. But one of the things that has always been a sore spot with him is his disdain for the NCAA, particularly as it relates to black athletes. He just, and it's not just the academic side, but it's, you get kids that are hurt, and they carry that injury with them the rest of their lives. Shouldn't the NCAA have some responsibility in that? So, I'll tell you a funny story when I get done, but even before he got to law school, when he was coaching, he wound up at New Mexico. He was really working, trying to get schools and get his peers focused on taking care of the athletes. especially the big money in college athletics. So that was kind of what he wanted to do with his law degree. So we'll see where that goes in terms of how he can make some changes when he was in college. So his freshman or sophomore year, he's a graduate of Duke. They got a new athletic director, or the athletic director came into one of his classes and taught something. So he's a freshman. As a matter of fact, it was his freshman year. So he just kind of spoke his mind to the athletic director.
And he's a student athlete, right?
He's a student athlete. And so, the athletic director is kind of like, who is this kid? 'Cause, he's running track and field. He's not a football player or basketball player. Surprisingly, they built a relationship. And for example, Duke University is not that far away from where a lot of blacks in Durham are, right?
No, exactly.
So, what's this school doing with these kids? So he started a mentoring program. He worked with the parties to get a mentoring program, having kids come over to the campus, share facilities and stuff like that. So I was very proud of him to take on that, take on that initiative.
Got that from you, right?
Charles, he's done a lot. I've been very proud, and I keep saying, "Gosh, whose kid is that? Whose kid is that?" So yeah, we'll see where he winds up.
Right now, he's still in Durham.
He just moved back from he did a federal clerk's position.
Oh yeah,
out in Las Vegas.
That's right.
And then he just got back to Durham a couple of months ago. So he's just trying to reestablish his contact and go from there.
You talked about your son wanting to see the NCAA do what they should do. With NIL involvement now and the transfer portal, college sports just flipped 8 million times to right. Your son see yourself maybe see himself getting involved in that in terms of using NIL in the right way and not in the craziest way?
That's a great question. So he comes to visit me when this NIL thing transfer portal NIL thing first started taking off. And I think he had predicted the NIL thing. And he came to visit, and he's up at 6:30 in the morning. What the heck? He was on his computer, on his phone. What the hell are you doing at 6:30 in the morning? And that's when he explained to me how that transfer portal worked. Coaches, you got to be out there. You got to see who's open, who's wanting to leave, and stuff like that. And so he started telling me about these changes that were coming through. And to your point, he was particularly concerned about, you give these kids some type of financial assistance or some type of money. Do they know what to do with it? How are they? It's not just them getting it. It's not just them blowing the money, but are people going to exploit them? And if truth be told, when you're a young male, you got a lot of money, a lot of people become your friend. A lot of girls become your friend.
Oh yeah.
And so it just sets it up for abuse. And that's one of the things that I remember him talking about. And he had put together some documentation to discuss, here's the type of program that you want to do. So that is a concern that he's got.
You and I talk a lot about, over the years, we talk about our ties. We've kept with each other throughout the years, and we laugh and joke about it, but we also have pride in our lives. We're very proud of what we've done and what we've gone through. You said something before we started about me that was really interesting, and I don't know if you want to share that with the rest of the audience, and just about me being here. Because I mean, I came in. I was gonna leave after 2 years. To be honest, that cold weather was I'm out the door.
Right.
Okay? But I met my wife, and she's from here. And we spent the time here in Black. But yeah, because we run into people from Detroit all the time. You know, Willie Burton's from Detroit. There's people from Detroit that get it to you right now, playing, and he also we talk him and I talk for hours about just being from Detroit, that representing the people, representing his heritage. His sister died. His sister got killed when she was 19, so he carries that with him. You know, I got to represent her and make sure she's all right. But you never forgot about your home. You never forgot about Detroit. You know, I've seen too many people have. I think people they get up there and they act like this is their home, but you haven't forgot about that. What makes you stay that way?
Boy, now there's a good question. Gosh, kind of goes down to what I call fundamental ethics, morals, and values, and the things that were instilled in us in terms of being important. Um, One comment that my mother made. So if you grew up in Detroit when we did, General Motors, the largest corporation in the world, Ford was number 2 or 3, and I think Chrysler was number 5. I mean, this was wealth in Detroit. And you had American Motors in there too. And George Romney was the governor. And you had this area called Grosse Pointe Farm, Grosse Pointe Woods, Grosse Pointe Shores. Auto executives. No blacks living there, but auto executives. And I don't know how the conversation came up, but I remember my mother telling me, looking at me saying, "You are no better than those people." And she also said, "Those people are no better than you." And that always stuck with me about who I am able to associate with in terms of making a difference. And nothing anybody on the outside is going to say to me is going to make me feel as though they're better than I am. And this is in the day when racial tensions were bad. And so that's what I remember my mother telling me. But my father had a different way of saying the same thing. We were talking about history, right? My father was a walking book of Black history. And it was amazing what I would talk about, and he'd say, he'd give me more information. And I don't want this to sound snobbish or anything, but I remember hearing things and people saying, well, gee, another generation of Blacks saying, I didn't know this, I didn't know that. And I'm like, I thought everybody knew it. Ed.D. Native Son. My favorite author was Lerone Bennett. He wrote a book called Before the Mayflower.
Before the Mayflower, yes.
And I'm reading all this stuff, so I'm like, yeah, I get this, and so those things were important to me. And when I came to Minnesota, I wasn't trying to tell people I wasn't from Detroit, but this is part of my heritage. Challenging. Well, we were talking about Gene Washington. I never met Gene when I was at Michigan State, but I see his picture everywhere. Somebody introduced me to him. And Gene started a program at Michigan State called the Minority Careers Program. And this was an attempt to bring big corporations on campus, you interview and stuff like that. I went every year I was there. I meet Gene, and one of the first things he asked me was, well, how come Honeywell isn't participating with the Minority Careers Program? I don't know. And so I went to HR, somebody at Honeywell at the time, and asked the same question. Here's this program. And from the remainder of my career at Honeywell, every year we would send a delegation to Michigan State for the Minority Careers Program. And that expanded to Michigan, University of Detroit, Wayne State, and a couple of other places of, reaching back and saying, here's an opportunity. Just last August, there was a girl that I brought in Michigan State's logistics program. She wound up over at 3M. Her and her husband got married. They live out east, and I hadn't seen her in like 20 years. And we just talked about the fact that her exposure to Minnesota, which is where she came after college, was because of that minority careers program and stuff. So it's just, yeah. I looked at my mother and my father, and having conversations with Bob Moran. Bob Moran was, keep you well balanced.
He sure did.
Keep you well balanced. Keep your perspective being strong.
Because we had some good people in front.
We had some good people
with us.
Yeah.
And I think they will all be proud of you and what you've done.
Yeah, we did. St. Martin de Porres just was a school where you had a black principal. You had teachers that cared. I don't know if you remember Miss Williams. She was a typing teacher, but she was a babe too. Oh my gosh!
Yeah, we had some good-looking teachers.
But it was just the direction that we were given and recognizing the importance of those behind us and stuff.
Yeah, my wife came with me to Detroit one time, and we actually met Mr. Rachel for the first time, and she came away saying, "I can't believe. I wish I got the same kind of experience you got." I mean, he said everybody I talk to, y'all keep talking about how proud y'all are and how this and how that. Mr. Rachel was talking about how proud he was of you and all the other things. She said, but I never got that when I was in school. And I went to North, and I went, I never saw that. I said, I see why you're on our sons like you are, because you're trying to instill in them things that you got, and still, so you did the same thing with your children.
There was a lady, so I'm a junior, she's a senior. Her name was Khadijah Strotter, and she was really into black female authors and stuff. And she used to have a play or something that she did, and I remember absorbing that, and I thought that was the norm. And I thought everybody got that exposure for a long time, and it took me a while to recognize that not everybody got that. Not everybody knew about Lerone Bennett and Johnson Publishing. Yeah, you read, Jet and Ebony, but
they were more than that.
Yeah, they were more than that. So
we always offer our guests an opportunity to speak to our audience in their own personal way. We call pearls of wisdom. And I know you have some that you can share with our audience that you can, whatever direction you want to take it, you can do that.
Words of wisdom. I will steal words from what Gene Washington frequently says, because when he first said it, it stayed with me, and it's every day is a blessing. And are there challenges out there? Definitely. But every day is a blessing. Carpe diem, and move forward. Because I hadn't thought about it till you asked that question. But slavery, segregation, Jim Crow, and one of our English teachers at Forest, I still have it, but it talks about as black. It's called Blackness, as a matter of fact. It's just moving forward. It is why I have kept that all these years, moving forward.
Lawrence, I didn't think we would ever be this close. And you was 2 years ahead of me in high school, and we have moved from a neighborhood that wasn't considered the greatest, but it was a neighborhood that we grew up in, to college, to winding up here in Minnesota.
Isn't that amazing?
And we kept up over the years. So thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you spending time. I want you to tell our audience about the things that you've done.
This was my honor. I didn't know what to expect. and you know,
Yeah.
I'm a kind of behind the scenes person, so this is this is new and different for me and stuff. So
Well, thank you, Lawrence, for
yeah,
being with us tonight. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you big time.
yeah.
For real.
This is Blacklight on Sports. My name is Charles Hallman.
I'm Dr. Mitchell Palmer McDonald.
Please continue to read us in the newspaper every week and join us when you get a chance, and hope to see you next time.